Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. 7:02. We'll get started as usual. Try to respect everybody's time. My name is Bo Breeden. I'm the president of Broadneck Council of Communities. This is Pat Lynch, our vice president. Just thank you all for coming out this evening. We have a jammed-packed evening. We have 3 elected speakers, and I'll introduce them in a second. We have the State Highway Administration here to tell us about our Route 50 summer plans, and we also have members from the Bay Crossing Study to give us updates on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge planning for the future. Just a couple things, housekeeping items while we're here. There's some refreshments and water. Feel free to get up and grab them as you need them throughout the evening so you don't perish over the 2-hour period of time. There will be a break between the elected speakers and the other 2 speakers, just for everybody's comfort and using restrooms and all. Just real briefly, just want to introduce just the members of the Broadneck Council of Communities. If they would please stand up and just say their name and the community they represent, it would be great. So I'll start with myself, Bo Breeden. I'm in Cape St. Clair.
Pat Lynch, Broadneck,
Amberley.
Amberley in the Broadneck. There's so many of you.
John joined Beechwood on the Burley. Pretty much all the Pleasant Plains.
Melanie Jeunesse, where did I live? Browns Woods.
Browns Woods.
Long day.
Oh, go ahead, Rick.
Rick Griswold. I live in Amberley. I do communications for the group.
I'm Roy Richard, and I live in Stonington.
Okay, in the back. Yep, go ahead, Peter.
T.D. McNeil, Dickory Point.
Yep. We'll get Barbara in the back.
Barbara Hitching, Logan.
Peter Bradley, Holman Community Association.
Okay.
Steve Ford, Bay Area Community Association.
Okay, yep. Member. So thank you all for coming out this evening. Just want to recognize them because we do meet throughout the year. We meet with different officials. We work on different items of interest for Broadneck Council or Broadneck residents, whether it's traffic plans, new buildings, violations of building codes, environmental codes. We sit on a variety of different commissions. I do want to recognize John Corrin from the Bicycle and Advocacy Commission.
The first word is all.
Bicycle. That's how I know you, John.
By AAA.
So if you want to introduce yourself and your group, you're welcome to do so.
John Corrin, Bicycle Advocates for Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. Also chair of the County Bike Commission, and I'm on the County Transportation.
Great. Are there any other committees or commissions I missed out there that before I get into introducing our speakers? I don't think so. Okay. And so tonight, again, we will have our elected speakers. Tonight we have Senator Dawn Gile from District 33 here on most of the peninsula, also Crofton and some other areas. We have Delegate Bagnall for 33C here, our direct representative. And then from 30A, because 30A now under the last couple years represents the lower half of the Broadneck Peninsula, Behler, who just joined us, in February, got appointed, correct? Yep. To take over for, technically, Shaniqua Henson, who took over for Sarah Efrith, who's now our Congresswoman. So here on the peninsula. So everybody got shuffled. So I'm going to turn it over to Senator Gile and let her go from here. And each of them are going to speak for 10 or 12 minutes and take some Q&A and give us an update on the 2025 General Assembly session.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bo.
Pass this down, please.
Okay.
Sorry. Just set it in front of you.
Is it better if I sit? I know that we're on here. Is that
Even do I.
okay?
You're more comfortable.
I kind of want to sit. I've had a long day running around. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I'm Senator Dawn Gile, as Bo mentioned. I represent District 33 in the Maryland Senate. We kind of, just because the Maryland General Assembly session, the most recent session, covered a lot of topics, we discussed in advance, and my colleagues here and I kind of divided up topics. So Heather's going to get into the budget in a little bit, and Dylan was going to talk a little bit of some of the energy issues. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to first talk about some of the changes with education, with Blueprint for Maryland's Future. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the Other bills that passed related to education specifically, I'll talk a little bit about some of the bills that I sponsored and passed, and then also talk a little bit about some of the capital budget funding that we managed to secure, some money for some infrastructure projects here in the district, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues. So first of all, I wanted to talk about, I don't know if much you here are familiar with the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. I see some hands. It was a huge bill that passed, transformative bill in education that passed several years ago. And there's several different pillars. Among them are investments in early childhood education, some college readiness type programs, increase in teacher pay, collaborative time, and a lot more. There has been some hiccups, admittedly, with some of the implementation. I think some of you may be familiar with some of the hiccups that have occurred here in Anne Arundel County as the local, what we call LEAs, the local school boards and the local school districts have gone about implementing the blueprint. And part of that is because as the state funding increases, some of the counties also have to come up with some of that money too. There's been some shifts in how funding occurs too, because the money needs to follow the child. And so there's a certain level of funding for just a baseline. There's additional funding for children that are English language learners. There are additional funding for children that are on IEP, special education. And there's also additional funding for children that are on free and reduced lunches. So it helps to put more investment, especially in some of the schools that have, frankly, greater poverty or that need a little bit more resources, too, especially for those kids that are English language learners or on IEPs. However, as I mentioned, there has been some hiccups with that implementation. So the bill that we passed this most recent session, the Excellence in Maryland Public Schools Act, that is a reform of the blueprint. Some of them, I won't go through all of the points of those, but just the top points of those is the collaborative time for teachers. That was a huge part of what the blueprint was intended to do, is to give teachers more collaborative time. The thing is we've got a shortage of teachers right now. It's already a problem with trying to hire teachers, not to mention the fact that we're concerned about cost. And if we hire more teachers, that's going to be more expensive. We certainly want to give teachers those resources, those time, in order to plan and prepare for the classes, but at the same time, we need to work things out with that first. So there's a delay on the collaborative time. It's going to be delayed for 3 years. There was some concern about community schools. Those are community schools that are operating and serving high poverty areas. So the community schools, we maintain funding for those, and any funds held at the district level must be used exclusively to support school-based implementation. There's also some fiscal safeguards that were put into place. It pauses annual blueprint funding increases if the state revenues decline by approximately $1 billion, adding a layer of fiscal responsibility to those long-term commitments. The legislation also grants the local school system some flexibility with the state funds. School districts can now seek a waiver of some of the strict funding formulas if they're having problems with implementing it. I know that, for example, Carroll County schools recently sought a waiver. I'm not certain at this time whether or not AACPS is going to be moving forward with that. I did reach out to our local Board of Ed rep, Dana Schalheim, earlier this afternoon, and she said it was something that she knows that the AACPS is looking into, but she does not know currently at this time, given that it just passed. So those are some of the basic things that passed with respect to changes in the blueprint. Wanted to talk too about a really exciting bill in education that I was really proud to pass. We finally got down over the last few years. We've been working on this innovative school scheduling bill. So Dr. Bedell, if some of you may have met him before, he's our superintendent of Anne Arundel County Public Schools. I think he's amazing. I've got kids in public schools. I've got a 8th grader. I got a little bit ahead of myself. But it feels like she's a 9th grader some days, let me tell you what. Definitely a teenager. But I've got an 8th grader, I've got a 3rd grader, and then I've got a 4-year-old who'll be in kindergarten this year, all in public schools. And he's been absolutely wonderful. Dr. Bedell has been teachers, school principals, everyone really sings his praises. Where the school district that he was previously at, he was able to get some flexibility as far as school scheduling. Currently, state law mandates that kids have to be in school both 180 days, I'm going to get this right, and 1,080 hours. Slight differences based on, I think, elementary, middle, and high school, but roughly about the same. The problem is, if you got a kid in school, is that what ends up happening is they have these pain in the you-know-what early dismissal days that are really hard on parents, especially parents that have jobs. And it's disruptive for the classroom. It's disruptive for teachers. A lot of kids skip those days of school. And so it's really hard for teachers to teach. They have to have those days in order to check the box on those 180-day requirement, and also to give teachers some time too as far as grading, things like that. So if they're able to get rid of that requirement and do an or instead of an and, it gives them some greater flexibility in scheduling, and we can get rid of some of those early dismissal days. In the past, it didn't quite pass, and the reason why is because there were some concerns that there weren't enough guardrails on giving that flexibility. Parents were panicking and saying like, oh my goodness, does this mean we're going to have 4-day-a-week schools, no Fridays, year-round school? Like, what is this going to mean? So we had a work group over the interim, so the period of time between sessions, and with AACPS, with the teacher union, with parents, all involved, and developed these guardrails in place. So it's just going to be used specifically to get rid of the early dismissals. Really, really thrilled that passed. That's a pilot program, meaning we give them the flexibility for now. It'll sunset in a couple years. If it's proven successful, it'd be wonderful to see if we can do this at the state level, because to be more widespread as opposed to just Anne Arundel County Public Schools.
And that's some of the guardrails we put in.
Yeah.
If it were to go statewide.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
What's a guardrail?
What's that?
What's a guardrail?
A guardrail? What do you mean? As far as this is,
I don't know what you mean by that.
okay. It just means they can only be used for early dismissal days. Yeah.
Guardrail is just a policy that won't let you go beyond doing a certain thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about, so anyway, I was proud to have sponsored. I know Delegate Bagnall sponsored it in the House. I serve as chair of the Anne Arundel County Senate delegation, and so I was the sponsor of that bill in the Senate. I ended up passing 16 bills for which that I served as primary sponsor, all of them with bipartisan support. Another 4 that I sponsored as the chair of the Anne Arundel County Senate delegation that passed, all of those having bipartisan support as well. I'm just going to touch upon a little bit of the bills that I sponsored. I won't go into all 16 before, in the interest of time, then I'll turn it over. One bill that I was really, really happy about is lowering prescription drug costs. There's a board here in Maryland called the Prescription Drug Affordability Board. First in the nation, that passed several years ago, I think 4 or 5 years ago, if I'm right. What originally was set up to do is to set upper payment limits on certain drugs that have demonstrated affordability challenges. The board consists of different really smart people that know a lot about prescription drug costs, as well as a stakeholder council including folks from the pharmaceutical industry. And so the board originally only had the authority to set upper payment limits for government insurance plans. So if you were on a state plan, for example, that's the most that they could do, was set upper payment limits on prescription drugs that have affordability challenges. So we're talking expensive drugs that would be on if you were on a state plan. So we've had, for the past couple of years, we had a bill in order to expand their authority. I'm thrilled that this year it passed. And so now their authority will also extend to those commercial plans. So if you're on, whatever insurance plan, health insurance plan you may be with your employer, this now extends that authority that they can set upper payment limits. There's a huge process that they have to go through, and they also have to consider certain impacts that it may have as far as like access, things like that. So I was really, really excited that passed. Worked on that with the Maryland Healthcare for All, AARP, lots of other strong advocates as far as on the issue of healthcare and on prescription drug costs. A few other bills I'll just touch upon. Some of the best bills that I just really love doing are bills that come to me from constituents. Those are the ones that have deeply personal meaning, that have deeply personal impact, that affect real people. For example, a bill that I sponsored and passed last year was a bill that was brought to me by a mom who had lost her son in a drunk boating accident. He was killed by somebody who was operating the vessel who was drunk. And we worked hard to strengthen boating laws in that case, and also to help with DNR's enforcement of making sure that that person wouldn't be on our waterways again. Another example of the bill that I sponsored for this year was brought to me by a woman in Severna Park who reached out to my office. She was really frustrated, was going through a really awful divorce, and she has 2 boys, and her lender wouldn't allow her to assume her mortgage. The concern was if she was being forced to refinance, is her interest rate would go up. She qualifies, absolutely meets all of the qualifications. She's got a great job. So she meets all of those financial requirements in order to qualify for it. It's just that they were saying because in order to remove him from the loan that she would have to refinance. She'd have a higher interest rate, have a higher mortgage payment, extend the term of the loan. And so she was worried, going through a difficult time period, an upheaval. All she wanted was to have that stability for her boys. And so we sponsored a bill that would allow spouses going through divorces to be able to just assume the mortgage. And thrilled that passed. We just signed that into law. The governor just signed it a few days ago. So she brought her boys with her too. It was really sweet, and was really proud of that one. I'll just hit a couple more before I turn it over. Another bill that it's just really frustrating. I do a lot of consumer protection bills. For example, last year I sponsored the really large online data privacy bill. This year I worked on with one of my other District 33 delegates, Delegate Andrew Pruski, on automatic renewals. So I'm sure a lot of you, if you look at your credit card statements, have a lot of those annoying charges, and you're trying to figure out what the heck some of those charges may be, those recurring payments. And you try to cancel those payments, and they make you call as opposed to signing up online. I know I signed up for a gym membership a while ago when I had time to work out, and I could sign up online, but I had to go in person to cancel. And I've heard the story from other people too. It makes it challenging. Let's say you have some health reasons you can't get there in person, or if you're military, you get deployment orders, whatever the case may be, it should be just as easy to cancel as it should be to sign up. And so we sponsored a bill. It's kind of modeled in some ways after the recent FTC rule, but we expanded on that. Worked on that bill with the Office of the Attorney General Consumer Protection Division, and that one passed. So I'm going to give some opportunity for my delegates to speak as well, but those are just some of the bills that I sponsored and passed. My staff, well, she's over there taking photos right now, but my chief of staff, Allison O'Brien, is back there. I believe she brought some end of session letters. She's nodded her head yes. So we're going to have some of those end of session letters there in the back. I also brought these constituent services guide. There's lots of things that all of our respective offices can help you with. If there's any issues that you may have with a state agency, for example, we get calls from people about, frustrations maybe. All of our government agencies are wonderful. I see Kim Tran over there. She's especially wonderful. But if you're having issues getting a response, like the comptroller, let's say, or if there's some safety concerns, states highways, you contact us. We can help you navigate that red tape and get you some answers and resources. And if we can't get you those, we can reach out to our county partners here with Councilwoman Fiedler's office, or with Congresswoman Elfreth or other federal partners in order to assist. Lastly, I just wanted to cover capital budget. So we have, as members of the Maryland General Assembly, we are able to sponsor what's called legislative bond initiatives. Now these are, as opposed to legislative bills, like the policy ones that I've just talked about. These are money, investments in certain capital projects, like nonprofits, for example. I sponsored with Delegate Chisholm improvements for additional funding for the Early Heights Fire Company. Got $170,000 for the ongoing construction of the new firehouse. It's still there in existence, but they're looking at developing plans for that. I know Cape St. Clair just popped over there. That's really exciting about the new building there. American Legion, $50,000 from some replacing aged kitchen equipment, some new safety lights. The Severna Park Elks, sort of renovations for their buildings, ADA bathroom. Another one here in the county, not necessarily here in the Broadneck or Severna Park areas, but in Crownsville, we have some wonderful substance use treatment centers. Gaudenzia is one of them. We got $400,000 for them for replacement of their roof, procurement and installation of safety equipment. They serve people from all over the state, doing absolutely wonderful work to help support some of our most vulnerable Marylanders seeking treatment. So really excited about those. So thank you very much for your time. And I guess we'll take questions at the end. I'll turn it over to Delegate Bagnall.
All right. That sounds good. Good evening, everyone. I will tell you that I'm going to touch on the budget, but to try and describe a multi-billion-dollar budget in 5 minutes is a bit of a Herculean task. I will tell you that this is my 7th session, and this was the most difficult one, and that's saying something because I started in a government shutdown. I was here for the death of our speaker, our special session when we elected another speaker. I was here for COVID when we adjourned early for the first time since the Civil War. I was here for when the unemployment system imploded and when the Key Bridge collapsed. And this was by far the hardest session we had been through. Because we were working on a budget with a moving target. So the theme of our session this year was stability in uncertain times. When we started the session, we knew that we were walking into a structural deficit. It's something that, no offense to our Senate partners, but the House had been trying to address for a couple of years. And this year, all three of our chambers got together and worked it out. And we're making sure that we were all rowing the same direction, the Senate, the governor, and the House. But within the first 30 days of the new administration, we had a $600 million write-down. What does that mean? It means that our revenues, our projections went down by $600 million because of some of the cuts that were coming from the feds. Maryland is uniquely vulnerable to federal action because we have such a large federal workforce. We have a lot of federal contracts. And so we were trying to make sure that we were establishing a balanced budget, but with a moving target. We learned that some of the federal funding cuts that were coming from the administration were going to result in anywhere from $360 to $418 million of clawbacks from our education funding. So we put some things in place and we addressed some vulnerabilities. One of the things that we did is we actually funded our Attorney General's office so that we could actually fight for that funding. We could make sure that those federal dollars that had already been allocated, that had already been promised, where we already had federal contracts through our waivers, that we could actually fight for those dollars. And we also addressed revenues. We took revenues very seriously. We took cuts very seriously. So what did we do? Well, we surpassed our affordability goals with a general fund balance of $392 million and a structural surplus of $15 million, which surpassed our spending affordability goals by $100 million and eliminated the structural deficit for 2026. We put $2.4 billion in cash resources in our reserves, including $2.1 billion in the rainy day fund. We adopted a general fund reduction of $1.63 billion, including $524 million through the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act, the BRFA, which reduced our special funding by $333 million. We Reduced planning spending by transferring to the general fund over $200 million of funds that were earmarked in the dedicated purpose account for future spending. We reduced our state budget with the abolition of 212 state positions and reduced general fund spending by $414 million compared to fiscal 2025. But some of the things that the governor proposed, we just thought were untenable. So we actually, the governor had proposed reducing some funding, including $122.4 million for collaborative time in public schools, $15 million for cancer research by the academic health centers, and almost $11 million for victims of crime grants, and $7 million of grants to local governments to enterprise zone taxes. So in response to our minimal growth rate, we invested $136 million in growing the private sector. The state support for public schools will total $9.8 billion. The blueprint for Maryland's future formulas are now fully funded. And direct aid to our local school systems will increase by 7.4%. We also looked at ensuring that we were not leaving our Medicaid population behind, because we have 1.5 million residents on Medicaid. So the budget adds $181.5 million for community services for the developmentally disabled, and to undo cost containment actions that were proposed in the original governor's budget, and it also increased rates of 1% that are funded for providers who are serving the developmentally disabled communities, behavioral health providers, nursing homes, and most Medicaid community-based providers. And one of the things that we did is we made sure that this budget prioritized public safety, funding police aid, victim services, creating new fund investing in community-based services for juveniles, and increasing staffing levels for the Division of Parole and Probation. We also addressed revenues. And I know many of you have heard that, that we have changed some of the tax brackets, and that 94% of Marylanders will not see an increase in their income tax. They'll actually see a decrease, or it will stay the same, because we were looking at making sure that the people who had the most paid their fair share. But I will tell you that there were some of the things in the BRFA that we knew this district did not want us to support. So some of us voted for the budget, but we voted against the BRFA. And we're hearing some complaints about that, saying, you know, that seems dishonest. And I'll tell you why we did it. Because this district has made clear that you continue to prioritize transportation. And we have Route 2, Route 3, 450, 50, 198, 197, the Bay Bridge, that you prioritize education, that you prioritize healthcare. Those are the three biggest ticket items in our budget. So we didn't vote against the budget, which would have been politically more expedient, because we didn't want to send the message that this district no longer prioritizes health care, education, or transportation. But we also knew that you wanted us to find another way to pay for these things. That some of these fee increases, that some of these tax increases, though the income tax, I think the committee did an extraordinary job given the landscape that we were going into. I know that this district wanted us to find less regressive ways of raising that revenue. So ultimately, the BRFA did pass, the budget did pass, and we have a balanced budget for now. But the reality is that we are likely coming back in September, October, because we don't know what those cuts are on the horizon.
The federal government.
The federal government cuts on the horizon. And we don't know what impact it's going to have on our revenue and on our workforce and on our unemployment. So there are some things that we also did in preparation for that. We addressed some vulnerabilities, and I'll talk about my legislation and also some of the overall vulnerabilities that we addressed. Let me start with the vulnerabilities. One of the things that we did is we created a resource for our federal workers, the Federal Worker Protections and Resources, which we established to make sure that folks that were fired or laid off, or as we know, sometimes fired and then rehired and then fired and then rehired, that they would have county and state resources to go to. And we also passed a bill. Sorry, I had it highlighted and then I lost it. Where is the federal workforce bill? Oh, here it is. We passed a federal public service loan forgiveness program. And also, we passed a bill in our committee, which is authorization to practice for former federal employees and dental applicants licensed or certified in another state. In other words, we have a lot of people in the federal government that are they are experts in their fields of healthcare, and we want to be able to capture that workforce here in Maryland. Maryland has an amazing healthcare system, which actually allows people to practice to the full scope of their practice. A lot of other states don't do that. They don't have as wide a scope for health practitioners as Maryland. So we want to make sure that if people are losing their federal jobs, that they can come here and work in the state of Maryland. So we also passed a bill that creates basically a compact. You all have heard me talk about compacts before. Compacts are state-to-state agreements under a certain health occupation. Like dentists can operate across states for any state that's in a compact, and nurse practitioners. And what we did is we created a much more limited one for our border states, so that if you are licensed in Maryland or you're licensed in Virginia, you can come and work in Maryland. Or if you're licensed in Delaware, if you're licensed in Pennsylvania, one of our border states, West Virginia, so that we're able to capture those populations of healthcare practitioners, because we still have a workforce challenge. So some of the things that I did, and I'll touch on some of the things that Senator Gile and I did together. This one's a little bit in the weeds. It's a state board of physical therapist examiners. It's just updating some outdated regulations. It's increasing the membership from 8 to 9. It doesn't sound significant, but it's all about making things more efficient and more affordable. We did. You talked about the school innovative schedules. Something that I've been working on for a couple of years is the Maryland Dent Care Program. So we have reimbursement for dentists and dental hygienists, tuition reimbursement, but only for full-time dentists and dental hygienists. So this year we expanded the eligibility to part-time practitioners, because we have a lot of people who, they are raising families at the same time that they're getting their licensure. And they should be able to capture that tuition reimbursement. It does not expand the pool of funds. It expands the eligibility of the people that can apply for them. Because we were trying to be very thoughtful on the things that we could do with very little money to make things more efficient and make things more effective. Another thing that we did, you've heard me talk about community health workers. These are the missing puzzle pieces. These are the secret sauce in our healthcare system. Community health workers are workers who are in the communities connecting patients with services. They connect them with getting to their appointments. They connect them with screenings, regular screenings. They'll connect them with other wraparound services as needed. We started certifying community health workers in 2018, but we have not effectively figured out how to reimburse through Medicaid for community health workers. So one of the things that we do have funding is what are called community resource grants. And community resource grants are funding that hospitals and community-based organizations can utilize to address certain health disparities, like if they have an initiative on diabetes, or they have an initiative on prenatal care, an initiative on sickle cell. They can utilize those community resource grants. So we established a framework for a memorandum of understanding for community health workers that are working with community-based organizations and working with hospitals, because I can see your eyes are already glazing over. That's the problem that we're trying to solve, is that nobody's really sure, like, who's the employer? Who do we get our benefits from? Who do we report to? Who's the supervisor? So this memorandum of understanding creates that framework so everybody knows who's doing what. And that way, that money flows into the community. It doesn't stay within the hospital. It flows into the community as it was intended. I did a consumer protection bill. I think some of you who were here last year heard me talk about the fact that I am the world's most unlucky car buyer, because I have a Hyundai that's been a lawn ornament for a couple of years, and that's when I discovered technical service bulletins. Technical service bulletins are those things that are really meant for a mechanic, but they're basically a guide of these are regularly identified issues with some of the vehicles, and here's what a mechanic would do. Last year, we tried to make those readily available at time of purchase, and we ran into some challenges with that. But in my effort to be the most unfortunate car buyer, I bought a second vehicle and discovered the challenge that is a service contract agreement. Service contract agreement, you're probably familiar with things like Car Shield. And so we got a service contract agreement, and they said they cover the engine, they cover the transmission, but not if there's an outstanding technical service bulletin. So, and Car Shield was actually sued over this. They actually had to pay a $10 million settlement. But so we passed a law that we just signed into, the governor just signed into law. We passed a bill that prohibits the use of technical service bulletins from negating paying out on a service contract. We will still get there, but we're a step closer. And one other thing that we did that again I did with our good senator is something called the Maryland Interested Parties Advisory Group. What is this? This is actually codifying federal law, but it's putting Maryland 2 years ahead of everybody else. This goes back to those community health workers that we talked about, because the advisory group is there to advise on things like Medicaid reimbursements, and it really prioritizes the employees and gives them a seat at the table when we're discussing things like their employment environments and what is a reasonable Medicaid reimbursement. It's required by federal law, but it's not required till 2028, and we will have ours up and running by 2026, which aligns with the next thing that we're doing, which is the HEAD model. Again, I understand this is all very weedy. I know I often say that I don't do the sexy bills, but they're sexy to me. I love talking healthcare. But we have something right now called the total cost of care. It's where all of our hospital systems share things like charity care. So we don't end up with hospital dumping. We don't end up with patient dumping. We don't end up with hospitals that are shuttering their doors because they have a population that can't pay. So they share that across all of our entire hospital system. So the federal government actually really liked what Maryland was doing. So they established what they're calling the HEAD model. That's an all-payer model. And it's basically total cost of care 2.0. So Maryland applied to be in the first cohort. And we were granted that first cohort. And again, it goes back to those community benefit grants. the head model is much more intentional about making sure that money flows out of the hospitals and into the community. Well, it's a good thing that we did it because the federal government gave us notice that they were terminating total cost of care a year early. But we're already ahead because we have already done our demonstration. We've already got our health equity framework in the works, and we've already passed our interested parties advisory group. So we're right on track for being able to adapt to the AHEAD model. So a couple other things that I'm going to tell you about very quickly as they relate to Anne Arundel County. There's a bill that we passed, which is a liquor bill, and it was actually at the request of the Broadneck community. One of the challenges that some of our facilities, like our Elks clubs and our Moose clubs, are having is that when they have rentals under the current liquor laws, they can't use any of their own liquor, and they can't use their own servers, which is a problem. They have to, the renters have to bring in their own liquor. They have to take it away. They have to bring in their own servers, and it's not only an inconvenience for these facilities, but it's a bit of a liability, right? Because they know their servers are trained in correct pours. They're not going to over pour. So we worked with the liquor board, and we established a new license. So renters still have to get a one-day license, but they no longer have to bring in their own alcohol. They no longer have to take it off premises. They no longer have to bring in their own servers. So this should help our local clubs be able to access that revenue without the inconvenience. Oh gosh, I know. There's so many things. I know. Let me just mention one thing. Going back to the capital budget, which is the Children's Theater of Annapolis. Children's Theater of Annapolis, you know that they have been looking to expand their annex. We were able to get them an LBI for $100,000 to help them expand that annex for the new facility, which will also hopefully be the start of renovating and reinvigorating the entire Bayhead Park. So before I turn it over to Dylan, I do also want to thank my Chief of Staff, Rory, who is here. And I also have end of session letters in the back and business cards and lots more to tell you about healthcare if you want to ask me later.
Well, good evening. My name is Dylan Behler, and as Bo said, I have the privilege of serving as the delegate for District 30A. So the district represents Edgewater, the Annapolis Peninsula up to Crownsville, and then 3 precincts over here on the Broadneck Peninsula. So you're primarily represented by Delegate Bagnall in the House of Delegates, but St. Margaret's and a few other communities, I'm your delegate. So it's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to serve. Because this is my first time here in this capacity, just a little bit of background about me. Firstly, I come to this seat. I've been joking, I know where the bathrooms are already because I had the privilege of serving as Chief of Staff to State Senator Sarah Elfreth when she was in the State Senate. And then after that, I served as Legislative Director at the Department of Natural Resources, where I worked on issues like this community cares deeply about, like Holly Beach Farm and a few other things. I joined the House of Delegates on February 6th, and we really jumped right into it. They threw me right into it. The other thing I'm trying to figure out if it's a good or bad thing to say is I also serve as the youngest member of the House of Delegates, so it's a privilege to wear that title as well. But as I said, I got appointed on February 6th, and we really jumped right in and got right to work. As you heard from Senator Gile and Delegate Bagnall, this really was an incredibly difficult session. We had a lot of uncertainty happening from the federal level. We had a difficult budget crisis that we were in based on decisions from the past 5 to 10 years. And on top of that, Marylanders were struggling with a lot of rising costs, including energy, childcare, and a lot of other different things. Later, I'll wrap up by talking about the big energy package that the legislature passed this session, because I think that will provide a meaningful impact to Marylanders in lowering the cost of energy. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about my committee work. So when I was appointed Speaker, Adrian Jones appointed me to the Environment and Transportation Committee in the House of Delegates. So we obviously oversee all environment and transportation related bills, but we also handle housing legislation, so everything from land use to tenants' rights. We also handle local government issues and also ethics issues. So it's a wide array of bills and a lot of topics that are very exciting to work on that also impact our community directly. So the first, and we call it E&T, so I'll keep saying E&T the whole time. The first E&T related bill that I want to touch on is the Chesapeake Bay Legacy Act, which I think this community will care very deeply about. This bill was sponsored by Governor Moore, and it makes a wide array of changes to how we're viewing Chesapeake Bay restoration. And I think what it will do is it will really modernize our approach to Chesapeake Bay restoration and hopefully allow us to make further inroads in that. So firstly, it codifies a water quality monitoring program so that way we can have the best information as a state on what restoration work is actually doing in our waters and also where the best places are to boat and swim. The bill will also create a new leaders in environmentally engaged farming program, which is going to allow the Department of Agriculture to work directly with farmers across the state to ensure that they're really targeting those best management practices that they deploy on their farms. And the goal is hopefully through the targeting of those BMPs that we can achieve a better ecological uplift and provide a complete restoration. The bill does a few other things too. I think the other really big thing that I would touch on is we know the Chesapeake Bay, and I'm looking at it right now, is it's a lot different than the Chesapeake Bay that we saw, that we had 20 years ago. And that's because of a lot of different issues. It's warming, it's increasing in salinity in some areas, decreasing in salinity in some areas. But what this bill will do is it will allow the Department of Natural Resources to manage our fisheries based on kind of that changing bay. So we'll give them new tools to be able to react for the striped bass or the oyster population to ensure that we can manage their species in a manner that will allow for their longevity. The other bill, E&T related bill I'd really want to touch on is a bill, it's related to expanded producer responsibility. So one thing that I was very surprised to learn this session is that our landfills are increasing at an incredibly exponential rate in the state. And we have to make significant progress to increase recycling to ensure that we're not in a difficult situation with our landfills in the future. So this bill will create an expanded producer responsibility program here in the state. It will make Maryland the 6th state in the nation to create a program, EPR program. And in summary, basically what it does is it will shift a lot of the burden to the manufacturers and the creators of differing consumer-based products. So, and put them in the place to where they're responsible for the life cycle of that product. So it will put a few different new requirements on those producers and ensure that they have to manage that item through the process and make sure that it ultimately gets recycled at the end of the day. It's a little bit of a convoluted process, but it's a really exciting bill. I think it's like a 65-page bill. And what it will do is it will ensure that more products are recycled here in the state and that we're a better steward of the products that we're utilizing. The two other E&T related bills that I wanted to touch on, the Climate Solutions Now Act of 2022 passed, and that established a lot of different laws and statutes related to climate change. One of those being the Building Energy Performance Standards program. And basically what that did, as originally drafted, it required large-scale buildings to get to implement, to reform their buildings to increase electrification. But through the implementation process of that over the past 3 years, I think the Department of the Environment and a lot of other organizations saw that it really wasn't going in the right direction. So what we did this session was we came back and we adjusted the program to make sure that we were still moving forward in a meaningful manner to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, but that there were opportunities to better incorporate the concerns of the housing community, those that manufacture and develop housing, but also other entities like the hospitals and other large-scale buildings. So this bill will ensure that it's implemented in a steadfast and even keel manner. And the last bill I want to touch on from E&T is a bill that will ensure that, I live in downtown Annapolis, and one of the things is there's a speed camera on a road right by me, and I've seen people going 40 miles over the speed limit on that road. But the thing with automated enforcement or speed cameras is that regardless if you're going 12 miles per hour over the speed limit or 60, it's the same penalty. So there's no disincentive for people that are caught excessively speeding there. So we passed a bill this legislative session that will create enhanced penalties based on the scale of which you're caught speeding. So hopefully providing a disincentive for people to not speed on our roadways and protect people like John Cornyn. That's kind of some of the work from E&T. And then I think the big thing that I wanted to touch on was a lot of the energy related legislation that we passed this year. I think I speak for the entirety of the General Assembly, Democrat, Republican, whomever. One of the biggest things that we wanted to address this session was the ongoing increase in energy rates that people were seeing. It is happening across the state. It's affecting everybody and anybody in the state of Maryland. So this was a top priority for the General Assembly this legislative session. And without getting too in the weeds, I think it is important to lay the groundwork with kind of how we got to that situation, why our energy rates were increasing. So firstly, we are a part of a grid. So the company that operates the grid is called PJM. And it's, I believe, a 13-state grid that is a combination of states from Ohio to New Jersey. And that company controls the energy rates amongst the grid. So a lot of the decisions that they make are unfortunately out of our hands. But what we did find through our in-depth conversations this legislative session was there was a lot of reforms that we could put in place in Maryland to ensure that Marylanders could see an immediate positive impact on their energy rates. So I think firstly, some of the things that we noticed that we could do in Maryland was increase in-state generation. So ensuring that Maryland is insulated from those decisions made by PJM, so that way we control our own destiny as it relates to energy. We also, in 2013, the legislature passed a program called STRIDE that basically allowed the electricity companies to expand their capital improvement programs and pass that cost onto the ratepayers, all of us. So we also recognized that we needed to reform that program. And then I think the other big reason why we got into this situation was the authority for the Public Service Commission to set these multi-year rate increases, where electricity companies can go to the Public Service Commission and they can say, basically, look, we want to increase the rates that we all pay over this period of time without any real explanation or really strong input on that on those ratepayer increases. So with all of that in mind, we did pass 3 major pieces of legislation this legislative session to really address a lot of these issues. And I do want to leave time for questions, so I'll go over those as quickly as I can. Firstly, we passed the Next Generation Energy Act, which does a lot of different things. I think firstly and most importantly, it took $200 million out of our Strategic Energy Investment Fund and is going to give that directly back to ratepayers. So in the spring and in the fall, ratepayers will see a direct rebate on their energy bills and that'll provide a direct benefit to ratepayers. Secondly, and this goes in the vein of ensuring that Maryland is insulated from decisions made outside of the state, this bill will ensure that we're increasing our battery storage capacity in the state. So as we increase our renewable energy usage, that we have the appropriate battery storage to be able to store that energy. So for example, solar, obviously at nighttime, it doesn't generate electricity. So we need to increase our battery storage to be able to store that electricity and have better grid security and round-the-clock usage. We did reform the STRIDE program that I was previously talking about to ensure that if these energy companies are going to be doing capital construction and passing it on to us, the ratepayers, that they have to demonstrate that there's a specific public safety need, because that wasn't in the law previously. We also reformed the multi-year rate plans that I previously talked about too, to ensure that they can only do that if there is a demonstrable benefit to us, the ratepayers. And the bill did a few other things, but those are kind of the major things. I think the other thing that I really cared deeply about in the bill was that it ensures that the executives of these energy companies can't use our ratepayer dollars for things like private jets to ensure that our dollars are going directly to the programs that they operate. The second bill that I want to touch on in this energy package is the Resource Adequacy and Planning Act. And this one is relatively straightforward. In the state of Maryland, we have a lot of different agencies and a lot of different units of government that review energy. We have the Maryland Energy Administration, DNR plays a role, MDE, the Public Service Commission. But what we found in all of that is that there's not really a entity in state government that serves as the future forecaster and planning for the future and helping us develop our policy solutions to ensure that we're building a more sustainable and secure grid for Marylanders. So what this bill did is it kind of established a new office to ensure that we are developing that long-term forecast. That way we can make the best decisions as policymakers. And then I think the only other bill that I want to touch on in this energy package is the Renewable Energy Certainty Act. This bill really just makes sure that we want to increase our in-state generation, and that is going to require an increase in the use of renewable energy. But what we have found is that some jurisdictions are kind of passing local laws and putting things in place that are making it a little bit harder to deploy that type of energy across the state. So what this bill did is it ensures that those types of roadblocks can't be put directly in place. But one of the things through that process that we did hear about is concerns from counties that solar is going to go directly onto agricultural land. And we all recognize that we need to have proper food production in this state. So what this bill actually also did was it established a first-in-the-nation cap on the amount of agricultural land that can be used in the state for solar. So that way we will always have land that is safe and free of solar in this state for agriculture land. So with that, I know that was a lot of information, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And I just want to say it's an honor to serve. I want to echo what Senator Gile said. Regardless of if it's a county or a federal issue, please contact any of us. We are here to serve and help solve the complex constituent challenges that we're all facing. So thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Before all the hands shoot up real quick, just making a note that it's 8 o'clock, and we do have two other pieces to get through this evening. We're going to allow for a few questions, but we're going to keep it tight so that we can continue on and make sure everybody gets out of here at a reasonable time tonight.
And if I could just say real quickly, Bo, and if you don't get your question answered tonight, please know that you're always welcome to contact our respective offices, email, phone call, probably email sometimes better, especially right now during the interim because may not always be physically in the office. Please reach out.
Go ahead.
The DNR was trying to get some additional authority to generate revenue in other ways than just taking state funding this year. Did that succeed or not?
Yeah, so there was DNR sponsored a departmental this year related to their public lands, and I think tried to be creative in how they generated revenue. So one of the really exciting things was it authorized DNR to create foundations for their work, similar to the National Park Foundation. DNR will now be able to stand up a similar state park foundation here in the state. Yeah.
Anybody else? Everybody ready to get to the Bay Bridge and summer traffic? Yes, go ahead.
I have a semi-related to Bay Bridge, which is, I heard you mention the Bayhead Park. Where is a good place to find what the latest is on that? Because I live on Bayhead and I don't feel I'm informed at all.
I'm not sure any of them mentioned Bayhead.
I mentioned Bayhead because that's where Children's Theater of Annapolis
Children's
is.
Theater.
I just am in the dark.
So we had that last meeting, but we can certainly
Where
get you.
can I find out more?
Right, so you're talking about the connection to the bike path and all?
I would just like to know what's going on in the park since I'm on the road.
Okay, so that's a county issue, not a state issue. Number one, because it's a county park. We can connect you with
Councilwoman Fiedler's back there.
Councilwoman Fiedler and or the Department of Rec and be able to get that information directly from the
Is there a place online I can just go to?
The County Parks and Rec's website has all the information along with the updates, the bike
That's
path.
where I'll go.
Can I say something?
Yep, go ahead.
Just for your information, our county councilwoman is in the back of the room.
She walked in, she walks in. I didn't introduce her at the beginning because she walked in during the meeting. But
That's okay.
I didn't want to throw her under the bus.
No big deal.
And if I may, Bill, so I know we just touched on a lot of things tonight, but I would encourage you to take all of our end of session letters, because we're all on different committees, so we each have addressed and highlighted different aspects of the session. So there's a lot more information in there, because obviously we don't have time to touch on every single thing.
Yeah.
If I don't see any hands shoot up, which is fine, we'll take like a couple-minute break and we'll rotate so we can get introduce the next round of speakers, and then okay, I'm going to introduce. This is Pat Lynch, and Pat Lynch is going to take it from here on this portion.
Everybody ready?
Yep, go back.
You know who I am, but I would like to tell you that I have responsibility for transportation, lucky me, on the Broadneck Peninsula for multiple organizations of which I am a member. And I couldn't be happier to have 5 speakers tonight from State Highways and MDTA who are going to tell you they're not going to solve all your problems, but they're going to answer some questions. They're going to tell you what's going on and give you some information, because this is a very important month. This is April, and guess what we're facing in a few more months? The misery of beach traffic that we endure. So anyway, let me just give you the overview. We're going to have the State Highway Administration representing the Highway Association is Teri Soos. I've had her speak here before. She's excellent. She's the Deputy Chief Operations Officer. And then we have Kim Tran, who's also spoke here at the Broadneck Council before. She is the District Engineer for State Highways. And then I'm going to ask Teri to introduce herself and Kim and tell you what they do, so you realize how important they are in order to help us solve or live with our problems till we get a new span. Also, I have MDTA, and they are going to talk about the Bay Crossing study. And I have Melissa Williams, who is the Director of Planning and Program Development, Heather Lowe, who is a Planning and Community Relations Manager, and Eric Almquist, who is the Bay Crossing Team Project Manager. So we're going to hold questions until the end. We have refreshments over there for you to stick around for a while. The speakers will be happy to talk with you and get questions answered, both while you're in your chairs and also over refreshments. So with that, I'm going to introduce my first speaker, Teri Soos.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate that. And thanks for having me. Thanks for having us back this evening. I know it's a beautiful evening out there, so appreciate you taking time to join us tonight. So I'm Teri Soos with the State Highway Administration. I oversee some of our statewide operations offices. We're located in Hanover, near BWI Airport, so I oversee maintenance, traffic and safety. Our chart team, you see them on the side of the road. They offer assistance. We also have a statewide operations center that's open 24/7 to help with any of those emergency calls. And I also oversee materials management. And with me tonight, Kim Tran, our district engineer for State Highways District 5, which is Anne Arundel County and Southern Maryland. Kim, you want to introduce the rest of your team?
Do I have to take this?
I think it picks us up.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Again, Kimberly Tran, State Highway in District 5. As Teri said, our district is all of Anne Arundel County, along with Calvert, Charles, and St. Mary. So we span geographically a pretty big area. I do have with me tonight a few folks from our staff in the district office, our community relations manager, Kelly Bulware, who deals a lot with our elected officials and our citizen requests in the media, and our traffic engineering manager for the southern half of Anne Arundel County, Jonathan McCoy, who's been here to some of these meetings before, and our IT guru, Mr. James Creeley. Thank you, Jim.
Still need the mic.
Just in case.
Can you hear us?
But again, as Teri said, with her position as sort of a statewide, in the district, we're sort of same types of things, but at the district level. So for our 4 counties, so for our 4 counties, we're responsible for maintenance, construction, traffic operations, things like that, dealing with the citizen requests that come in, collaborating with the elected officials and things like that. So let me turn it over to Teri. We're going to get started with a very brief presentation to talk a little bit about what's going to happen in the upcoming summer with the pilot program.
Thank you, Kim. So as Kim said, we have a brief presentation. I think we've been here before talking about some of the ramp management that we have been trying to implement. We do know that the better solution ultimately is more capacity on the Bay Bridge. And Melissa and her team will talk about that shortly. But in the interim, we are trying to do what we can, and what we are able to achieve is a matter of minutes. It is not going to solve the world's problems, but we'll present a little bit of information and our plans for this coming summer. All right, so as we mentioned, we started in 2022. We closed one ramp for 2 weekends that summer. Decided it was just enough of a success that we would try it again in 2023 and in 2024 as well. So the intent of this was really to listen to the communities and provide congestion relief on the service roads. We also looked at the safety and operational benefits along the whole roadway network, and we are continuing to collect data. We'll go over some of that data. It's still, as an engineer, I'll say it still leaves me some pause. It's not, we're not, it's a little bit more art than science. We certainly don't have all the answers yet. So in the summer of 2024, we closed exit 32 only, Oceanic Drive, on weekends from May until the end of August. We closed the ramp on Fridays and Saturdays only. We did see some improved travel time despite the higher volumes on Fridays and Saturdays in 2023. Eastbound US 50 travel times and delays were, is this correct?
Yeah, slightly less.
Slightly less in 2023. What we're finding is there are just so many different factors that affect the traffic and what the drivers, we have to remember that behind every vehicle is a driver, a human making decisions, and we can't always predict that. So there are many factors that affect what happens, right? So it is the changing traffic demand, it is different incidents on the bridge, on the other side of the bridge, whether, if there is even a stalled vehicle or a disabled vehicle, or if there's a crash ahead, all of that seems to have an impact. And again, we can't always predict what's going to happen with traffic behind them. So this is just one of our graphs. This was from summer of 2024, showing you, so you'll see so this is your expected travel times along US 50 from Maryland 70 to the Bay Bridge. And in your early morning and your later evenings, that's under 10 minutes. As you all know, as traffic demands increase, starting around noon and then to about 6 p.m. on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, that's when that travel time increases. Friday is your worst day. Saturday, Sunday also tend to be in there. Thursday afternoon as well. Kim, you want to add anything?
Yeah, so like Teri said, this peak here, the green line is Friday. Fridays are by far the worst, but as she said, we do have problems on Saturday and Sunday only because they never go into the extra lane across the bridge on Sunday because the extra lane is coming back. So, it just shows throughout the day that we have this peak. And as we know, when the traffic increases on Route 50, just like water finding where it's going to flow, that's where they start looking for alternative routes, and that's where you start to feel the friction on your service roads.
And you might ask yourself why we are spending so much time on US 50. That's where we have our best data. We pick that up from the cell phones that everyone has with them in their vehicles. And we figure that that's really what affects traffic on the service roads, right? So if US 50's flowing clear, then people aren't tending to get off and use the service road unless they need to visit, you know, gas station or what have you, so. So just comparing travel times from 2022, 2023, and 2024. Again, matter of minutes, that it ranges, that travel time from Maryland 70 to the Bay Bridge ranges from 30 to, 22 to 31 minutes. So even when we implement ramp management, again, it's a matter of minutes that we're saving, and not, you know, not revolutionary measures that we were able to implement. And this is kind of your average time. If there's an incident on the bridge, if there's a crash or a disabled vehicle, or, you know, there's weather and there's not in two-way operations, that can add additional time to that.
Can you guys explain what Maryland 70 is?
Yeah, so that's Row Boulevard. So from Row Boulevard over to the Bay Bridge, as she mentioned, in free flow, like early morning and late at night, it takes about 7 minutes to get from Row to the base of the bridge. This just shows the top row, shows for each year, 2022, 23, and 24. During those peak congested times, the average on a Friday, the first row, and on the second row, the average on a Saturday, instead of taking 7 minutes, it was taking like 30 or 29 or 22. When it was getting up to 30 minutes, then there were time savings to be had by frankly dumping off and trying to go find another way, right? When 7 minutes, they're not gonna bother, but when it was 30 minutes, they're gonna look for other routes.
All right, this is just a comparison chart. This is going to be really hard to read on the screen, so I apologize, but we were thinking two-way operations on the bridge makes a big deal of how much that delay is and whether people jump off and use service roads. So these are 3 different Fridays from June of 2024, June 7th, 14th, and 21st. And it starts this is the time of day up top, and then this is the amount of delay, or miles of backup. So this here, and it's hard to read, but this is a 10-mile backup. Wow. This here is the Severn River Bridge. So on June 7th, we were in two-way operations through 9 p.m. June 14th, I think due to weather, we were not in two-way operations that day. Still about the same amount of backup. And on June 21st, we were in two-way operations only till about 2 p.m. And then I don't know if there was an incident on the bridge or if winds had picked up at that point, but we were only in two-way operations until 2 p.m. So we thought that was a big factor. It's not looking like it's the only factor.
Really? No, that's good.
This is the same information, just in a different graph. Again, the blue line is June 21st. Again, we were in two-way operations only until 2 p.m. in the afternoon. The green line is June 14th, when we didn't have any two-way operations on the bridge. And the orange is June 7th, when we were in two-way operations. This is the time of day on the bottom. So this is 10 o'clock in the morning when traffic starts to back up. Here's noon, 6 p.m., kind of gets back to normal operations. Again, all 3 days, different conditions on the bridge.
Right, so that y-axis is the speed. So free flow, 65, 70 miles per hour. And then, like she said, around 2, 3 o'clock, that blue line that dips, that's down 15, 16 miles per hour on the main line of Route 50. So as you say, everybody came to a crawl.
All right, say this is at 4 p.m. on a Saturday, and again, a little bit hard to read on the red screen.
It says Friday.
I'm sorry, 4 p.m. on Friday. Worst time for delays. You probably all know that. All right. This is where Bay Bridge picks up, Severn River Bridge. Red is the congested areas. Again, 3 different Fridays, 3 different conditions on the bridge. Kind of looks the same. So with all of that, we know we have more data to collect. So our plans for the summer of 2025 are going to look very similar to what we did in 2024. And we know we have to collect, we are going to partner with University of Maryland. They have a very advanced traffic center there that will help us with some of this analysis, determine if we can do anything better, if we can make any adjustments this summer or for summer of 2026. But our planned ramp closures are, again, the one ramp at Oceanic Drive. And I will say in 2023, we did permanently close the Whitehall Road exit 31. So that was one area that we made a permanent change. But our temporary closures in this summer will be exit 32. We will do Fridays and Saturdays, starting 10 a.m. on Friday morning, continuously through 6 p.m. on Saturday.
So in previous years, when we close it, it's a combination of our maintenance forces in the district, which are under me, and the statewide emergency patrols chart that are ultimately under Teri, working together in conjunction with each other. Our maintenance forces have to set up all the detour signs. We've seen them out there. They're like flip signs. We have a lot of VMSs that we end up renting every summer. I think it's 11 VMSs in the area that have to have digital messages put on them. All that has to be activated in time for 10 a.m. Friday. And then we had maintenance dump trucks out there that actually sit at the ramp. And the first year we had police there with us too, remember, that man that during the day, even though it was closed overnight, the folks are manning it in the dump trucks all day, Friday and Saturday. This year we're going to be procuring like a swing gate. So it's 2 gates for Oceanic because you can either turn left onto one ramp spur or you can be coming off the other way and make a right. But basically we won't have to have those 2 dump trucks sit there for those 2 days. Once we get the gate in place that will close, the chart patrols that are always going through there anyway will continue to check on it in case something happens, or, those gates will be closed Friday at 10 a.m. and then Saturday at 6 p.m. they'll be able to open them back up. We still will have maintenance forces that will have to change those VMS, close up those flip signs and all of that. But that's the idea for now. We do realize that it's not a complete advertised to the public, long distance traveler, folks that live right here know, right? But the long distance traveler that's trying to come, that word gets out that Friday and Saturday, because then you just have to circle back, right? And we see that adds extra traffic on your service roads when they get down to 32 and have to circle back. When we can get that enclosure, then we have the best opportunity for folks to avoid the area and not try it. I will say we have been asked in the past, can we make it a little bit more dynamic? For instance, anytime the bridge happens to not be in 2-way ops, can we go ahead and close that ramp? We're not really able to be that fast responding the way MDTA is. We're not out there. And that information isn't going to get out to the long distance traveler that way. So again, this is our plan for this summer. We're going to continue to collect data on the service roads as well as far as what those travel times are when the ramp is closed and on, for instance, the other days when it's not closed, and we'll continue to make some comparisons. Trying to think if I have anything else before we maybe open it up to some questions. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So you're not going to try to stop people coming down to Orange Pathway and going onto East 50 by the I forget the name, the frontage road there. You're not going to try that again this year?
I'm not sure I know what you mean by try it again. We've never restricted them from getting on it altogether. other than to close the ramp at the end, 30 or 32.
I think about 2 or 3 years ago, you did close off that
Exit 30.
He's talking about 30. You closed 30 2 years ago.
Okay. The entrance ramp, we never closed the exit ramp.
The end, that's right.
Right.
But you get all the traffic coming down Route 2 and sees that there's congestion on Route 50 and they come down College Parkway. That's almost as bad as the other things you were describing.
Right, we do have a VMS out on Ritchie Highway that explains that we're trying to keep people on Route 50. It's trying to tell them, stay on 50. But College Parkway is a county road, we only have so much control of that. But we are trying to discourage them from doing it. But people are entering it into their apps and they're seeing whatever they think is the shortest time. Yeah. Yes, sir, right here.
So, the year 23, from a local perspective, seemed like the cleanest and best situation for the locals trying to access local stuff on the service roads and getting over to Cape and things like that. And I think that was the year you did close the ramp on 30. And so is there anything different from 24? I didn't quite understand what you might be doing this year in time changes or anything else other than the gate?
No, it's very similar to what we did in 24. What we did find when we tried to compare what happened in 23 versus 24, as Teri said, there's a lot of other factors that are in there. There were several, I want to say, perfectly sunny days, but it was so windy that the bridge couldn't go into two-way ops.
No, I understand. The bridge situation,
Right.
there's not a hell of a lot you can do
Right.
about that.
But what I mean is, when you say that things were better in 23, it may be because some of the Route 50 conditions were better on those days as well.
Maybe.
So we had some Fridays and Saturdays that were pretty bad last year with the wind conditions. So we'll see.
Kim,
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any data on the service roads? Like College Parkway, you said is a county road, but then St. Marcus Road is a state road.
Right, so the service roads themselves, like East College Parkway and Whitehall Skidmore, there's a little bit of travel time data that we collected last year that talks about, hold on a second, flip the page. There we go.
Because we can't get it in and out of our neighborhoods.
So on
Alright.
basic, I'm trying to find it. Basically, it talks about how the travel time to get, when we had ramp closures, the average amount of extra traffic during those peak times, when you saw the Route 50 travel time is so bad and they're going to go use the service roads, it was about 200 or 300 vehicles an hour that are using the service roads when we had the ramp closures in place. If we don't have the ramp closures in place, it was like 600 vehicles were all trying to go use the service roads. And so the travel time on, say, Whitehall Skidmore to get across there was, during those times when it was like 600 vehicles trying to do it, it was like 6 minutes or more to get down there. But when it was limited down to about 200 vehicles, the travel time was a little bit better. It was like 2.7 minutes. So it was about 3.5 minutes faster. This data, though, that we're getting, that's what we're trying to digest, because we know just from our own driving through and seeing some of the bad times, and anecdotally what we're hearing from you folks, 6 minutes versus 2 minutes doesn't sound like what was happening on the service roads in many cases. I mean, we were hearing things like an hour and a half, right? So we're not putting too much stock in this data yet until we collect some more and see what was really going on. Yes, ma'am?
Have you collected any data for Sundays?
You know, I don't know. I don't have Sunday data here. I know that I believe the first year, did we include Sundays? Yeah. Yes, Thursday through Sunday. I don't have the comparison of the Sunday data here. We do know that there's usually a problem on Sundays because the bridge can't have the third lane going across. But no, I don't have that data with me tonight. I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Kim, how did you pick May 16th?
To be honest with you, last year we picked the weekend before Memorial Day, the weekend before commissioning week, because that's what the Eastern Shore was doing, and we were matching their start date. And honestly, we just decided to start with that date again this year, and that's what the District 2 is doing. Yeah.
There's a question in the back, the gentleman there.
Yes, sir.
This evening.
Yeah.
2 questions, I'll keep them brief. So, but first, thank you guys for doing this. This is terrific that
You're even taking the time to figure out solutions for us and listening to our suggestions in the last few years. Have gotten a lot better. So my first question is, you mentioned that people will come down College Parkway and then continue all the way down, ignoring signs and going past the exit 3rd. I noticed last year especially, there was a lot of that traffic, and there was backups headed west, just as far as the eye could see. And what I noticed over there was that at that decision point of College and Cape St. Clair, there, number one of the signs was overgrown. You couldn't see it. It said go to this way to Route 50. Another one was there wasn't a sign specifically right there that said do not go any further. Don't head on. Is there any change in maybe putting one sign there in that spot so people make that long move?
Yeah, matter of fact, if afterwards, I would like to get some more details about that. Either myself or Jonathan McCoy, who's here tonight, because I remember hearing this comment last year as well, that there was another place that if we could add one more sign, it might help some things. But when you talked about the traffic doubling back and being so bad in the westbound direction, we do have data on 4 particular days that was really bad. And one day, I mean, like you said, College Parkway to East College Parkway, get all the way around to entrance 32, find out I can't do it, and then go take Skidmore, Whitehall, all the way over to 30, and then that to get back on at exit 30, that was backing up for like 11 minutes or something.
More people would get so frustrated that they would go 90 miles per hour both to the stop sign.
Yeah.
My other question is the overhead signs on Route 50, the green and red arrows. Have you done any studies or looked at those to understand when is the right time to turn them on and off? And I don't mean closing a lane. What I noticed was that you will move it down to 2 lanes when there's a 3rd lane, and a lot of people will just keep going down and down, and they're kind of like butting in line, if that makes any sense. Has a study happened where
you get involved in that?
You change, maybe you don't have the red X until further closer to the bridge? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Sure. So I will, I don't know if Melissa's ready to answer, but those signs are part of the Bay Bridge, you know, when they have the 3rd lane or they don't. So MDTA operates those signs, and I know there are specific guidelines for when you turn them on, when you turn them on. I know Jim would answer in a heartbeat. I don't, do you want to take that one?
You're good, and basically it depends on, there's going to be the time period where we're switching into and out of contraflow, and that's where it may seem like, why in the world is there a red X? But it's oftentimes when we're in the transition period that things seem a little bit wonky.
Or could the lanes stay open closer to the bridge, is what I'm saying. So it's 3 lanes, and then as you get closer to the bridge, you funnel everybody in the last minute.
I understand. Again, we're looking at trying to move traffic as best we can, and we believe that what we're doing right now is the most efficient way we can move the most traffic. Doesn't always feel that way, but again, we have significant congestion there.
Okay, thank you.
You also the
Yes, ma'am.
Now I'm out back up last week, I was in the side road. So what happens is with all the traffic that comes on the side road, Skidmore and Whitehall access are deteriorating. And we watched when US 50 eastbound and westbound were blacktop, when from Holly Beach to the police department was blacktop. It was not necessary. And the craters on Skidmore and Whitehall are ridiculous. And so what we're told now is that because of budgetary issues, they may not do it this year. Now,
okay.
So that's got to be addressed because all that overflow is just deteriorating those side roads.
I appreciate the question because it's something I wanted to get a chance to mention tonight. Thank you. So both of these service roads, East College Parkway and the Whitehall Skidmore, for years they've been classified as a classification of roadway that was not eligible for federal funding. That being said, we have lots of roads in our district that are state funded only, and it's been challenging to get them into our resurfacing program. We were successful recently in the last year in changing the classification of these 2 roadways so that they now are eligible for federal funding. So now they're within the resurfacing program that our more major roads are within. So that's great because our state dollars are always very limited. And in our district, Anne Arundel and Southern Maryland, along with right over the Bay Bridge, District 2, we have a lot of state-funded roads. And frankly, some of them are real. I mean, I've got roads in Southern Maryland that literally a resident goes out and mows the road because grass is growing up through the middle of it, and I can't get it paved. But anyway, the good news is, so Whitehall Skidmore, we're actually getting ready to finally pave it, totally pave it this spring. It's supposed to be done by the end
Fill
of,
the craters on the side.
yeah, and so how it's raveling off the edges, that will all be addressed, because the whole thing will get paved for real, with real striping and everything, right? So that's great. East College Parkway has just as many problems. They have, you know, a lot of that utility work that's been going on out there with the flagger that's been doing from the county and the hiker-biker trail. They've had some challenges. It's not for me to speak on, but they've had some challenges. We've seen times where there was nobody working out there for a while. They've been working through their challenges. That being said, their completion date was not real set. So it was hard for us to schedule what our funding and what our contractor is going to do, not knowing that we could rely on their completion date. We recently got an update from the county that they believe that they're going to be done possibly by May. What they will do is where you see they're putting that down near the login and down near the east end where that curb and that weird little 3-foot cut up against the curb, that is actually, they're going to have to pave that the width of the whole lane. So that will at least be better than it is now. Our maintenance shop has been out there last week trying to at least address a lot of potholes on all the roads and even on Oceanic. But this spring, we're going to be paving Whitehall and Skidmore, that's State Highway. And then this coming fall, we'll be going out and paving East College Parkway, because we needed to make sure the county was totally done with what they're doing. So that'll be a big improvement once those two are finished. Yes. Yes, sir.
Kim, thank you for the light at the intersection of St. Margaret's and Old Mill Bottom. We have, since it was put in June of last year, raised the issue. There is no provision, if you're coming either way on St. Margaret's Road, for a left-hand turn into Old Mill Bottom or a left-hand turn into Pleasant Plains. If traffic is flowing steadily, that whole lane is going to stop while that car waits.
We understand. This is a challenge.
You've got signs up that you're recording the traffic, and we've been praying over this since last June.
So typically when you have a single lane and there's no room for a left turn lane or even a shoulder for people to squeeze by, then it's very difficult for us to put in something like a green arrow. There's no left turn phasing but you know, we are looking at the possibility of trying that, but we're not convinced it's going to help a whole lot. You know, if the first guy in line wants to turn left and the green arrow comes up and he can turn left, but once the other direction is let go, then if it's the third or fourth guy in line that wants to turn left, everybody's still stuck behind him until the end of the cycle. So until he's the first guy in line and he gets a head start, he doesn't really help. He's going to get stuck.
When the truck is there,
yeah,
the traffic going west is going to stop.
That's right.
And it's going to stop through a whole cycle at least.
We've had a lot of challenges with the detection. We feel like we've made improvements in the signal timing and the detection and the optically limited lenses so that you're not seeing two sets of signals and things. The next challenge we're trying to get creative with is how we can deal with the left turn. So it's not lost on us. We're still working on it, but we haven't completely cracked that nut yet.
We'll take 2 more questions. We got 2 more questions, and we need to get on to the next segment.
With that intersection on Old Mill Bottom Road where it tees into St. Margaret's, you have a left-hand arrow.
Same thing.
And there's no reason to need that there. At the top of the hill.
There is no reason. I've never thought of that, but.
That arrow should have been eastbound St. Margaret's Road versus the T intersection at Old Mill Bottom.
I'm looking at my traffic guru.
It's basically the split phase on Old Mill Bottom is what it's talking about. It's the 5-section phase.
The side street has a 5-section? Okay, it's split phase. Right, Old Mill Bottom comes up by itself. There's nobody opposing Old Mill Bottom when it comes up.
Is there a left-hand turn signal there?
Well, it's just
There's
the
an
same
arrow.
green line. It's the same as a green line.
There's a left-hand arrow on Old Mill Bottom Road.
Right, that just means that you are unopposed and you have your own phase. Pleasant Plains would have the same thing.
Because you got a green light, you're going to turn right or left.
Correct.
Yeah, it's redundant, but who cares? We know what we have to do.
Yeah.
It should be on the eastbound side.
One more question. Do we have one more?
Is it?
One more question and then we're going to move on.
Yeah. Oh, I'll ask later.
Thank you.
Can you get this guy in the back?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
That's okay, about the Friday and Saturday. I live on off of Bush Frontage Road, you know, on Pueblos Forest, where, yeah, like a couple people live, and like we're kind of forgotten there. And so Thursday is insane. To you guys, it's 5 miles, and, you know, the other days it's 10. But unless you go around St. Margaret, go downtown, go through St. Margaret, and sometimes there's issues, we literally are in, from Thursday to Sunday morning, maybe noonish, we're in 5 or 7, as you're showing 10. So it's a much more significant problem. By the way, I'm all for closing Whitehall and fixing it up. Great, it really makes a big difference, even down by us. So I would say do it Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and change those signs from like 9, 12, not, you know, well, it'd be like 7, 12, 7, 13, 7, 14. No one knows what that is. Just say Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I think the out-of-towners would, that would be much more intuitive to them. And then you wouldn't have to change it, the date all the time, you just have that.
I do like your idea about just saying Friday, Saturday, and not bother saying what the calendar day is. We have been hesitant to go back to Thursdays. We do have, you know, north of Grumman, it's at the end of the road there. We're trying to be good neighbors with them, and it is more than 130 people that are trying to go home over the bridge from there as well. So we've had a lot of conversations with them, and we've been trying to stick to just Fridays and not the Thursday and Friday.
Well, I get that, and I get you guys are from the state, but we live here.
I understand.
You know, and that's my problem with the bridge crossings. It's great for the people coming back from vacation, but we live here and we get a lane closed and it backs up.
Well, they had a meeting last night on the Eastern Shore, and they'll tell you it isn't great getting back either. So.
But like, you know, this is where we live.
Yeah.
You know, that's not happening where they live. I get you got to move them, and your concern is moving traffic, but that's not my concern, honestly.
Okay.
Hey, Kim.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and move on.
Yes. One question from Councilwoman.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a really quick statement and question. Anecdotally, I will tell you that those 3 separate June Fridays did not feel like what the study illustrated. So I just would suggest to you all, if you're able to either look at Saturdays, because we do have significant traffic on Saturdays, but look at a weekend when, worst case scenario, your kids are out of school, because 2 of those Fridays, kids were still in school. One of them was a Friday before graduation.
Yes.
So people really aren't disconnected yet.
And we understand that too, that after the 4th of July, you know, later July and into the beginning of August is way worse than June. And like we said, that's why we realize we have a lot more data to collect than what this is trying to show.
I'd like to
thank you very
invite
much.
you all to stay afterwards for refreshments, which will give them a little time to have people ask more questions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa.
Okay. All right, thank you everyone for hanging in there with us tonight. It's about 8:45. Our presentation's only about an hour and a half long. So,
It's a big bridge.
sound good? Sound good? We could talk traffic all night, folks. Again, thank you for hanging in there with us. Just want to introduce the team that we have here today. Our good friend Pat asked MDTA folks to come and talk to you all a little bit about the Bay Crossing study. We are not looking at this summer's traffic patterns. We are looking at the future and looking at a potential new crossing. So that's what we're here for. I'm Melissa Williams. I'm the Director of Planning and Program Development at MDTA. Heather Lowe is the Planning and Community Relations Manager at MDTA. The 2 of us are your MDTA agency leads for this project. Heather leads up environmental while I lead up engineering. And then we have our consultant partner, Eric Almquist, who is leading up the overall project from the consultant side. Keeping in mind we have many folks working on this project, but Pat asked us to bring our management team, so we're all here for you tonight. What we will be showing you tonight is the information that we shared with you back in December, show of hands, I see a lot of familiar faces. Folks who came in December and to our open house meeting, wonderful. So we are going to move quickly. We won't take an hour and a half of your time tonight. We're going to move quickly. What we have for you are displays from that meeting in December that we're going to talk through quickly. We also have some displays in the back, as well as some tchotchkes. We have some reusable bags, pens, and cards to help keep you up to date on where we are on the study. If you'd like, we will stick around a little bit afterwards at the boards and answer any individual questions, because I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of time that we'll be able to have everyone's attention and get through everything. So we'll get started at that.
But we do have more time. We're extending the time beyond, so you
Okay.
get whatever time.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Just need to figure out how to change. There we go. So that doesn't jump.
It jumped, that
Okay.
one.
Did it?
You missed one.
The schedule was the next first one, right?
No, second. Okay.
No, the schedule's second.
Okay.
Schedule, yeah.
Well then, that's good.
Sorry about that.
That's fine, go ahead.
Finicky. All right.
It'll be a surprise. Okay, so we started this study. This is a two-tiered study. You say, what does that mean? Why have you taken so much time on this project? I promise there's good reason. Because what we needed to do, there were several, if we want to call them historic, crossings of the bay that different groups and entities over the years had studied and had looked at. So what we needed to do in order to get to the end, which is a new crossing, is to go all the way back and look at the entire bay and look at different areas where crossings could be. We did that effort. We looked at 14 different potential crossings, and this is no surprise to anyone here. In order to solve or address the issues at the existing Bay Bridge, we need to be exactly at the existing Bay Bridge. We needed to do that background work so that we could put some of these other alternatives and alignments to rest. So in 2022, we started this Tier 2, which is looking at the existing corridor where the bridge is, from east of the Severn River Bridge all the way over to the 5301 split, focusing on the bridge itself and trying to determine what we can do in the future. Folks, this is a long road. We've spent a lot of time on this project, but I promise you we are at a very exciting point right now. We have 1 year left in the study. What are you going to see next? What you're going to see next, you saw a bunch of different alternatives in December. When we come back to you this fall, you're going to see MDTA's recommended preferred alternatives. So what we're going to come to you with, we're going to say, look, these are all the things we looked at, all of the alternatives we looked at. We fleshed them out. We looked at the environmental impacts. We looked at the traffic. And this is what we think is the best solution. And we're going to open up for folks to give us input and let us know what they think. We'll then spend several months fine-tuning. We will fine-tune, and we are looking to have a decision on what could be built in the future by the end of 2026. So we are on the home stretch.
That go to the, I know you have the Tier 1 map that you wanted to.
That's all right. I don't care.
I don't know why it's not.
It's okay.
It's literally just like not showing the slide. So.
Whatever's next is okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Perfect.
that's what I have next.
Okay.
Looking at the purpose and need, why are we doing this project? Folks, congestion is just one of the issues, okay? Congestion is very important. It's important to everyone here. I'm going to be completely honest in telling you that we cannot solve every single problem at the Bay Bridge. We will not have free flow traffic 24/7, 365, but we can make things better, right? Main thing that I like to tell folks, right now we have 5 lanes. Those 5 lanes are getting older. We've got 1952, 1973. These are old bridges. They need more and more work. More and more work takes more and more time. The more time we're working on them, the more money, very much so more money, and the less time that you've got all 5 lanes open. So do nothing doesn't really help us in the future. It's actually worse in the future if we do nothing. So please keep in mind, congestion is one thing, but also being able to have even the same capacity that you have today is important. So we're also looking, of course, at things like our adequate capacity, but mobility, looking at roadway deficiencies, looking at things like perhaps having shoulders, wider shoulders, not needing to use contraflow, not being quite so tied to to our winds and our weathers and things like that, because we wouldn't necessarily need the capacity of contraflow. Also looking at accommodating maintenance. If we have wider shoulders, we don't necessarily need to close an entire structure when we're doing maintenance on a bridge. We're also looking at important things like minimizing our impacts on the adjacent communities, including the natural environment in the area. Okay, again, this is just a quick picture of our study limit east of the Severn River Bridge to 5301 split. You are getting the abbreviated version because we don't want to keep you for an hour and a half. Okay.
What's up with the lines?
That's a little surprise for me, folks. So we're all surprised by that. I apologize. I promise that's not on my version. So proposed action. Folks, I'm sure you've heard the third span statement. That's not what we're looking at. What we are looking at is taking down the existing 2 bridges and building 2 new bridges. When we are done, I urge folks to come in the back corner here. We have a video screen running, and it shows possible construction sequence. So basically, we could build 1 bridge, take 1 down, build another bridge, take the next one down. So that's the type of thing that we're looking at. We're looking at taking down the 2 existing and 2 new. With that, we are looking at several build alternatives, which means different lane configurations. How many lanes leading up to the bridge? How many lanes on the bridge? So I am going to pass off to Heather, and she's going to get started with that discussion for you.
Great, thanks, Melissa. So what you can see here is our puzzle wheel, which shows all of the different elements that we looked at in order to develop the alternatives. We looked at the existing bridges. We looked at structure type of a new crossing. We looked at alignments relative to existing US 5301, number of lanes of a new crossing and the approach roadways, structure location, transit and transportation system management and transportation demand management, that's TSM, TDM, and a shared use path. And I've got slides where I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these elements. Next slide. So this slide shows, thank you, shows how much we have spent on the existing bridges since 1970, when the second bridge was open to traffic in 73, I believe, up to 2023, and then beyond if we were to keep those bridges to 2065. You can see that in our 1.1 those bridges in the future, because they are aging, as Melissa mentioned, is estimated to cost $3.8 billion. Additionally, the maintenance and rehabilitation projects that would be needed, we would be looking at 24/7 lane closures. The work that we do now, we try to do on off-peak hours or overnight. We wouldn't be able to do that with a lot of these projects. And additionally, because keeping the existing bridges would not meet that navigation need in the purpose and need, that's why we're recommending removing the existing spans and replacing them. Next slide. Oh, the lines are back. Okay, so structure type. We looked at potentially a tunnel. That video in the back, and you can see how we might build 2 new spans. It also gives us more room for maintenance of traffic during construction and inspections, and we can use the existing right-of-way with stage construction that you can see in that video.
Yeah.
Next slide.
So more lanes, more lines here. So if I do have another file, if I want to, I can go to the other file.
I think it's okay. Yeah, ignore the lines.
Sorry about that.
That is the first time I've ever seen
that's
that.
a new one.
So we did want to put in a slide about tunnels. So a lot of people were very interested in a tunnel. So a tunnel, you could have an immersed tube tunnel, which would require us to dig up the bottom of the bay to then construct the tubes for the tunnels, or a bored tunnel. So obviously with an immersed tube tunnel, there would be a lot of environmental impact to the bottom of the bay. There's also a lot of environmental impact for both bored or immersed tube on the approaches. Additionally, a tunnel, this is 4 miles wide. That's a long tunnel, it's a long bridge. But a 4-mile wide tunnel would require ventilation islands. I think they were 20 acres, maybe 40, I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly. But if you think about that, if you have an island, you're building an island in the middle of the bay for ventilation and egress in possible, if you need to have a way to get people out. The impact to the bay is just tremendous with that. Additionally, mobility challenges of not being able to accommodate that shared use path and the hazardous materials restrictions. Steeper grades would be required, impacting trucks and their speed, which then impacts the capacity. And also we would have less flexibility for maintenance of traffic. And a big one is also the tunnel would be significantly more expensive. We're looking at 2 to 3.5 times more expensive. So our estimates for just the structure for a new 8-lane bridge would be, 8 lanes would be $7.3 billion, 10 lanes, $8.4 billion just for the bridge. The tunnel would range from $17 billion to $21 billion. Yikes. Okay, next slide. So the alignments relative to existing US 301, looking at the environment and the development and the natural resources, the community resources, our residences and businesses, we realized early on that it really makes sense to limit those impacts and stay along the existing US 5301 corridor as much as possible. Next slide.
I like how the lines go in different places.
I know. We're gonna have to figure that out. So for the number of lanes on a new crossing, a new bridge, as well as the number of lanes on the existing approaches, we looked at everywhere from a 666 lane combination, so that would be 6 lanes on the approach roadways and 6 lanes on a new bridge, all the way up to, we also looked at a 686 alternative, so 6 lanes on the approach roadways, 8 lanes on a new bridge. We looked at an 888 lane combination, 810-8, and 10-10-10. And you can see, maybe you can't see, I know this is kind of small. So the 666 alternative that we looked at did not show much improvement over the no-build conditions in 2045. So we're not recommending, or we are not carrying that alternative forward. The 686, 888, and 810-8 all showed some level of improvement. But by the time you get to the 10-10-10 combination, that's showing the same improvement as an 8-10-8, so it didn't make sense to carry forward that 10-10-10. So our alternatives that we're retaining for detailed study are the 686, 888, and the 810-8 lane combinations. Next slide. Okay, so we are also retaining both a north and in-between alternative and a south and in-between bridge location alternative. So for each of these lane combinations that I went over, we are looking at potentially constructing a new lane just north of the existing bridges and then removing one of the spans and then building the second span of a new bridge. Or just south, building a new bridge just south of the existing bridge location and then removing an existing span and building a new, that second span for the new bridge. And that is shown in the video in the back.
We actually have it here too.
Do we want to show it up here?
If you want to. I mean, it's just the south and everything.
Okay, so let's show that real fast. Well, as fast as it moves.
Yeah.
So this is the south and between bridge location. So you can see both the eastbound and westbound spans. Under this scenario, we would build a new span to the south of the existing bridge, then remove one of the existing spans, the south span, and then build that second span for the new bridge. And then remove the old second span. Okay, so transit options. We have also retained some transit options. We are looking at potential enhancements to bus service, local bus service, commuter bus service, or intercity bus service. We're also looking at potential priority treatments for transit, including maybe a 24-hour dedicated transit lane, congested period only dedicated transit lane, bus on shoulder operation, or a queue jump lane. So the transit options that we are not retaining are a ferry service, heavy rail, light rail, and bus rapid transit. And these transit options would remove a very small portion of the traffic going across the bay. So that is the main reason. Also, they all would have substantial environmental impacts and costs associated with them. Okay, next. Now the TSM, TDM options that we are retaining and still investigating are congestion pricing, interchange consolidation, part-time shoulder use, and park and ride locations. Next slide. So the shared use path, we're also retaining consideration of that shared use path. This is a pretty popular option that we're looking at here. A shared use path across a new Bay Bridge would be separated from travel by a physical barrier. We'd also be looking at a fall protection system. And so that we're considering a shared use path could span the full length of a new bridge, or potentially just go part way to offer that recreational use. So these are all things that we're considering at this time. So Eric's going to take over.
Go to summary. Hopefully, can you all hear me with the without the mic, or? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'm just going to give a summary of what we just talked about, and then talk about next steps. So this slide is meant to show a summary of all of the elements that we looked at as part of the alternatives development. So you can see they're all lined up here. Each of the ones that Heather talked about, beginning with the going from the remove the both existing bridges. Would be the option that we'd be retaining. The ones that are in color are the ones that we're retaining. The ones that are grayed out are the options that we're not retaining. We would be doing a full bridge with all the alternatives. We would be staying on the existing approach alignment. We'd be looking at the 686, the 888, or the 810-8. We'd be doing either a north bridge location or a south bridge location, looking at bus service improvements, and we're looking at those TSM, TDM options that we talked about, like congestion pricing, and then the shared use path we are continuing to consider. So now for the summary of our alternatives. So we have 7 alternatives total in the proposed alternatives retained for detailed study, or ARDS. All of the alternatives, as we mentioned, would remove the existing bridge spans, so those would not be retained, and they would be replaced fully with a full bridge. And the full bridge would have 2 new spans. We feel that's important for a number of reasons. One, for constructability in terms of funding, but also in terms of redundancy. So we really do get a lot of benefit from having 2 spans as opposed to 1 large span. Also keeping it on the existing approach alignment of US 5301, we're not going to be wavering very far from the existing alignment. And then those bus service improvements that we talked about. So alternative A is our no-build alternative. This would be doing nothing other than what's programmed right now for continued maintenance of the bridge, but there will be no new infrastructure. So that maintains what we call the 6-5-6 alternative, right? That's 6 lanes on the eastern shore, 5 lanes over the bridge, 6 lanes on the western shore. And we have alternative B and C. Both of those are the 6-8-6 alternatives. So 6 lanes, basically retaining the number of lanes on the eastern and western shore, and then you have an 8-lane bridge, and you have an option for north or south. And then so that's the alternative B and C. Alternatives D and E, same thing, but with the 8-8-8 option. So basically the same number of lanes, 8 lanes all the way across through the corridor. And then alternatives F and G would be the 8-10-8 options, both north and south, where you have 8 lanes on the shore and then 10 lanes over the bridge. And then we have those other things that are down at the bottom that we're continuing to consider for all of the alternatives, including the TSM, TDM, and the shared use path. Another way of looking at it, just graphically, showing the western shore, the number of lanes there you see in the chart, 6 lanes or 8 lanes. The bridge span would be either 8 lanes or 10 lanes, and then the eastern shore would be 6 lanes or 8 lanes. So it's important to understand that when we're talking about widening US 5301, on land, we're basically talking about widening it by 1 lane in each direction. That would be the maximum that would occur under these alternatives. Or it could potentially stay, in essence, the same as it is today. Let me walk through some typical sections, just again showing graphically how this would work. This is today's structure. This one really shows how it narrows down at the existing Bay Bridge. You don't have any shoulders there. The lanes are narrower compared to on land. Really, it does become a pinch point, and we do have less capacity on the bridge today than we do on land. So again, 656 for the no build. And then walking through each alternative B and C, 686, and then alternative D and E, the 888, and alternative F and G, the 810-8, which is the widest of our alternatives. We're of course looking at environmental resources, socioeconomic resources, natural resources, historic properties. There's also a federal law called Section 4F and Section 6F, which protects parklands and historic properties. It's very important for transportation projects. All of these are under consideration as part of our environmental impact statement, which is really the crux of our study right now and what we'll be coming out with at draft EIS in the fall of all of these environmental impacts for each of the alternatives. We've been out and about with the community. This is part of our community engagement circuit, I guess you could say. We've been out to more than 70 community events easily over the last 2 years, and we're going to have many more over the summer. So if any of you out there would like us to come to one of your community events, please let us know, and we'd be happy to come out and give some information and definitely foster that community engagement. So back in December, many of you attended our public scoping meetings. We had a virtual meeting that had more than 430 attendees. We had a meeting at Broadneck at the Broadneck High School, which was 188 attendees. Ken Island, we had nearly 130 attendees, and we've received well over 1,000 comments so far at just those meetings, and more than 5,000 comments so far as part of the study. So everybody's got a story to tell about the Bay Bridge. Everybody knows about the Bay Bridge. It really is a very well-known study, and everybody has a different opinion on what to do with it, and that's what we're trying to cycle through. It certainly is a large effort. We got a lot of survey responses from many different zip codes around the state. Some in Montana, some in Washington State, West Virginia. You know, everybody's got an opinion, like I said. So, yeah. Okay, so next steps. As Melissa mentioned, we will be identifying MDTA's recommended preferred alternative. It's really going to be a huge milestone for the study. That is coming later this summer, maybe fall. We're assessing the environmental impacts, as I mentioned, so that we can prepare the draft environmental impact statement, and we'll be holding public hearings in fall 2025. So with that, if you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer.
Can I ask?
Real quick, folks, just want to let you know this is an absolute ton of information we just went over. All of these displays plus more are available online. I'm going to pass out these cards because two-sided English, Spanish. They show you our schedule, where we're headed. Folks, you're going to be looking for our draft environmental impact statement in the fall, and public hearings will be coming up this fall. But it also gives our website, baycrossingstudy.com, so you have it written down. So we'll be handing those out. They're over there, but I'll pass some around. So, but Pat, is it okay for a couple questions?
Yeah, sure. Can I just ask one in particular, given that we live in between a series of bridges that over time have been adjusted, and more recently we consolidated the distance on lanes on the Second River Bridge to allow for a 7th lane. Will you guys be proposing a 12-foot lane, 11, or 10? I realize you're not quite there yet, but is the goal to make it, while also having widening, the most safest lanes possible available to everybody crossing?
Sure. At this point, we are proposing 12-foot lanes. That is what we are proposing.
Okay.
We're also proposing full shoulders.
Good.
Sorry.
Can you, when you go to, if you go to the 8-lane bridge, how feasible is it to put to design your foundation so that it can be expanded, essentially like what happened to the Severn River Bridge? They put a wing on it, and it allowed it to be expanded. Otherwise, we really have a big traffic jam there. So my question is basically, how much of a problem is it to build this bridge so that it can be more easily expanded, so you don't have to go through all this stuff again?
Right, we are looking to the future with our design. Our design year is 2045, and we are looking beyond then. So we're hoping to be meeting the future needs with the structure that we would be building now.
Over-engineer.
Well, in order to, quite frankly, someone just said over-engineer. In order to over-engineer, you're looking at exorbitant cost. So what we are doing, instead of building to an unknown future, we are building to the future traffic that we can anticipate occurring in the future. And we would have lanes on the bridge able to accommodate the traffic that we see into the future.
Okay. Then why do you've got you've got an 8-lane or a 10-lane as far as the bridges is concerned.
That is correct.
As being your, so clearly, then you're thinking about different features? Or
What we are
further
looking
away
at
in
is
the
different
future?
alternatives, and we're running traffic scenarios for now and into the future to see how those different lane configurations could handle the traffic. When we come back out in November, we will be showing a preference, which is what our agency prefers and what we believe would be the best solution.
Just still has to run to the political side and get
Oh,
funded,
I understand
so
that.
you gotta have
I
this
mean, it's
alternative.
still a small matter of how much money it's gonna cost.
Well,
Sure.
So I'm a little confused on some of the language you use.
Sure.
And so when you talk about existing alignment, we're gonna keep the existing alignment. For those of us here, we're most concerned about 50 onto the bridge, because that affects us the most. So I'm mixed up with existing alignment, and when you say 10, 10, are you making 50, 10 lanes wide in that proposal? Like, I don't understand
Okay.
what you're proposing for us.
Oh, sure. Would you like to go to a certain slide or anyway?
Go.
This one?
Okay, you know what, that's all right, don't worry about it. Okay, so I'll just use words, it'll be quicker. So when we say existing alignment for 5301, we mean the road's gonna stay exactly where it is. It might get 1 lane wider, but it's gonna stay exactly where it is. We're not.
It's placement, but not necessarily width. I mean, you may go wide.
It might be 5301 minus the bridge, might be 1 lane wider, or it might be exactly like it is now, but it won't
Don't
be
you see a
somewhere
problem
else.
with that? With going from this narrower thing into, that's where we have the backups now. It's like, we can't accommodate people on 50, so they get all scrunched up on 50 and then over the bridge. It just doesn't make sense to me that you wouldn't try to widen 50.
Can you guys explain the land
They
distance you
are
own at
considering
that
widening.
location?
They are considering widening 50.
No, she just said not much.
We're not looking at moving 5301, we would be looking at keeping it the same or adding 1 lane in each direction is what we are looking at. And what we're doing right now is running those traffic scenarios to, as you said, see what would happen if we had a 6-lane bridge, or an 8-lane bridge, or a 10-lane bridge, or 6 lanes on 5301 versus 8 lanes on 5301. That's what we're doing right now, is running those different scenarios to see, quite frankly, we have bottlenecks, areas where the traffic slows down, and we're looking to see what would happen with these different options and different ways to put the lanes and the bridge lanes together.
So when you say 6, it's 3 lanes, you explained to me, 3 lanes.
6, there's 3 lanes in
which
each
is what we are
direction.
now.
That is correct.
Okay,
So
so
4
it's
lanes
that
each,
or 1 lane more.
On the
in each
approaches, yes. Yep. Sorry.
Going into the impact, the environmental impact, can you explain what that means? Is this where, because you're talking about widening and somebody's home or that beautiful walkway they got, something's gonna go. And so at this point, when you're talking about widening 5301, What does that mean in terms of landowners, business owners?
Yes.
And other part of it is, what is the environmental impact really look?
Right, so that's exact, so all of those things are in the environmental, are gonna be in the environmental impact statement. So what we're required to do and what, MDTA is dedicated to doing is making sure we understand all of the potential ramifications of any of the alternatives. So that means how much right of way are we gonna need? Whether we're taking, not the right word, but acquiring historic properties, right? What are we gonna do to wetlands? What's the impact on the bay bottom? What's the impact on endangered species? What's the impact on the community? All of those things are gonna be factored, and certainly, if we're talking about widening, then we are adding width to US 50, and there is a very strong likelihood that there will be property acquisitions associated with it. And what we're trying to do is balance out what benefit we can get versus what the environmental impact is going to be, and then trying to make the best decision overall in light of both of those things with your input.
Please don't say taken, please say purchasing or something. That doesn't sound
Thank you, I
good to say
apologize
taken.
for that.
But that's clear, that's what it is. You can say acquisition, but acquisition is taking.
Well, it actually is the legal word for it too.
It's legal, but it's
Intervening.
Yeah, I apologize for your
Sir?
This is gonna bring SHA and MDTA together, I think. My belief, and it's a hypothesis, I'd like to see the data to bear it out, is that some of the congestion that goes into the neighborhoods is because through traffic uses Ritchie Highway when 97 jams up. And so now Ritchie Highway, which is no longer a highway, it has traffic lights and driveways and so forth, draws a lot of through traffic. They end up on College Parkway, to your point earlier, and that's part of what's jamming up the neighborhoods. So I know the study limit here stops at the Severn River Bridge. It just seems to me we need an overall systems look that extends at least to 97 and looks at capacity on 97, because if we could get the through traffic off of Ritchie Highway and to use the controlled access roads, which are designed for through traffic, that would relieve a lot of the neighborhood congestion. So, and I can tell you the Transportation Commission just sent that view into the county executive for advisement, because the widening of Ritchie Highway is going to exacerbate the problem, I think. It's going to get Google and Waze bringing more people to Ritchie Highway, which is no longer a highway. So, I had recommended expand the study limits, or at least SHA join with MDTA and look at the overall system.
Sure.
And how do we keep people off of Ritchie Highway?
Sure. SHA and MDTA are and have been
I'm sure.
working very closely
Yeah.
together, specifically on traffic issues, realizing that we're kind of a piece in between state highways,
right.
roadways. We are working together, realizing this is a huge system,
Yeah.
and this bridge is a piece of the system.
Right.
Can you explain the thought process in having more lanes on the bridge than on the remaining road after the bridge?
Yep, that's actually a really good point. Think of the bridge. You go up high, it looks beautiful, doesn't it? Go around the curve, visual is different. You handle several hundred less, you're able to carry several hundred less vehicles per hour on the bridge than on the road. Okay, both sides.
But you go from 4 lanes to 3 or 5 lanes to 4 in all the designs you have.
Sure.
There's never a 4 lanes to 4.
No, there
or
is.
5
There
lanes
is.
to 5.
888.
The 888. We do look at 888. So that's really the issue. So that's where folks say, well, shouldn't you have consistent and be just 888? But it actually, it does make sense to look at maybe a 8-10-8 or the 6-8-6, because the bridge can handle less vehicles. So you end up with one more lane on the bridge. You end up being able to handle the same amount of vehicles as you would with one less lane on the approach roads.
Or to limit the disruption on both sides. 3, 4, 4, and 3, 4, 4. So you only have to make 7 lanes, 1 extra lane on the western shore to go. It would have to keep going west end.
And that's where we are looking at, the consistent with the 888, so we'll get that same answer for you with the configurations that we are looking at.
You're also elevating the bridge, right?
There's a potential of that. We are currently working with the Coast Guard.
I hope so.
And to determine, and what the Coast Guard will do is they will come back and they will let us know what our minimum navigational height would be for the bridge. We're currently working with them right now.
Yeah,
There
that
is the
determination
possibility that the bridge would be higher.
Take a question from this side of the room.
Yep, I'm sorry, I'm sitting
No,
this
that's
way, I
fine.
need to turn.
And then Heather after that.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, sir.
So, how about a time frame? Like if the proposal is good and you find one and it's accepted, budget and everything, breaking ground, so completion, is there like a rough window?
Yeah, so we've gone through a whole lot of steps to get to where we are now. You probably don't want to hear my sob story, but I've been working on the Bay Bridge for over 20 years now. This is a massive, massive project. So we've got to realize it's not happening overnight. We've gotten as far as we've ever gotten with making improvements on this bridge, and we're very excited for the possibility for the future for looking at new bridges. That said, if at the end of next year we come up with a build alternative, we would then be looking at procurement, meaning what type of construction would you be doing? Would you be doing design, bid, build? How would we be paying for this? We would have to start looking at funding. So all of these things start to happen. We look at, would we be building one, taking one, building one, taking one? What type of construction sequencing would we be doing? Lots of things would be happening immediately after choosing. But let's go with, and I call it my stars aligned model, which means everything falls into place. All of the procurement falls into place, all of the money falls into the place, politics fall into place, everything's perfect. We believe that we could start construction on the first span in about 2032. Folks, it sounds like a long time, but what we gotta remember, this is beyond a once-in-a-lifetime project. And we need to plan it right so that we can build it right and so that we can get the best use out of it well into the future, looking at the next 100 years.
Heather. Heather had her hand up in the back, and then this gentleman up front. Go ahead, Heather.
Thank you so much. One of the things that I saw that you were retaining was the potential consideration for park and rides. As you're looking at that, would you also be identifying locations and or environmental?
For park and rides, we are looking at working with the counties and finding the ability to connect to and looking at using the existing. Yes, yes, yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes.
Gentleman up front.
2032?
Correct.
And when did the planning process begin?
2018.
That's a big question because back in
give me an approximate answer. Like the year?
2018.
Sure. So this tiered process that we're working on right now began in 2017, and that's when we looked at the whole bay. And then starting in 2022, we started looking at just this location. But between 1930 and on, folks have been looking at these crossings and how much capacity was
needed. I would just add a footnote. There was this event, December 7th, 1941. There was another event in August when the war ended. We fought 2 wars and we got it all done. I'm not bugging you, but somehow we're dysfunctioning. We have so many requirements that we have to meet that we've tied ourselves in a knot.
I like to think of it a slightly different way, as a planner. And so, but think about all of the different ideas that are going on in this room and the fact that this is probably the largest infrastructure. It is, without a doubt, the largest infrastructure in the state's history, one of the largest in North America ever. We want to get this decision right. And it takes a lot of input and it takes a lot of analysis in order to get that.
So it takes 20 plus years.
There's a lot of different political interests and and it's also extremely expensive too.
Matt, over here, one question. We're going to take 2 more, 3 more, and then we'll go to.
I had a quick question. You had a slide up there that talked about kind of like dismissing the idea of like alternative transportation methods, train and bus and ferry. And I think like maybe part of the frustration is, you know, a couple years ago when they first started about alternative crossings, there was like a north plan and a south plan, and then at the end of the day they say just build it where it is. And I think generally like people are like, well, if it's not going to be built in 2032, what are you doing in the near term? And if I heard you correctly, like the reason for not following those or pursuing those alternative arrangements is related to environmental impact and cost and whatnot. And I guess like I wouldn't discount like the idea of ferries. There are Washington State, North Carolina, New York, Maine, all have robust established state ferry systems that provide alternative arrangements for travel. They're, especially with alternative fuels, electric driven ships now. Like there is a possibility there. It also doesn't take 10 years to build a ferry. So I wouldn't just dismiss.
We have done ferry studies, and go to our website, you can see it. We have done ferry studies, and great points. It's a great enhancement, but unfortunately, ferries would not be able to carry the volume of traffic needed to solve the issues at the existing bridges. Doesn't mean that a ferry system couldn't be built by others, that it couldn't be done in the future. Also doesn't mean that any of the other alignments, maybe far north, far south, we didn't say that they were bad or that they wouldn't have use in and of themselves. We simply said that they don't solve the problems at the existing bridge. So if another entity came along and if 100 years in the future they decided a crossing between Baltimore County and Kent County, or who knows, if one of those other 13 alignments made sense for another crossing, we're not saying that can't happen. We're just, our problem that we're studying right now is the existing structure, and that's why doing improvements at that location would help that location the best. But by no means does it discount that those other alternatives don't have benefits in and of themselves.
But you guys make it quick.
I'll make it quick.
Real quick.
At the Route 2 meeting, I spoke to the person, the head of highway, SHA, and he said that they're going to be starting on widening 97 very soon. So part of your...
It got put on hold, and some are advocating for it to get
I didn't know that it got put on hold.
We'll have another meeting on that one. What's that?
We're happy to stay around and stay at the back for a
So-
little bit to answer more individual questions.
Yeah, I'm going to bring this portion of the meeting to the close, respect everybody's time. It's 9:30 at night. Your elected officials have been here for more than 2.5 hours. Your state employees that you guys pay, we pay out of our taxpayer money, have been here, very gracious and kind to be here. Thank you very much.
No.
I'm going home at 10 and locking the clubhouse. You have 30 minutes. You do not have to put tables and chairs away. Take the time to talk, get your answers, get your emails, do that. But 30 minutes from now, I'm closing this up. I'm going home.